Today, it's just the company. There is no query. Now, I did not realize that Jake was such a Chicago White Sox fan. I don't think he is, but he seemingly has this tradition where he goes to a White Sox day game every year. And frankly, that is my kind of tradition. You know, because it's kind of like when Kevin Bowen and I, and by the way, my name is Greg Rakestraw. Hello, how are you? And you can hear there's activity in the background. I'll tell you where we are. It's not far from where I live, frankly, and it's a place that I know well, and I'll get there in a second. But kids, one story at a time. Even the voices in my head are having a full-blown conversation as we speak. You know, anybody can go to see the two first-place teams play. I'm a much bigger fan of watching the last-place team play because you know why? You get all kind of room to spread out. Nice and comfortable viewing, whatever you are doing. So Jake, who literally lives within walking distance of the Indiana State Fairgrounds where we are right now, instead of being here at the grandstand with standard bred racing taking place literally as we speak, he is heading to the south side to watch the Chicago White Sox a little day baseball. I said, tell Colson Montgomery I said hello. So you are stuck with me as your substitute teacher between now and 3 o'clock. And there is something that is something of a running joke or a little inside baseball here. When you have a fill-in host that isn't used to talking in 15 and 20-minute story arcs and sometimes by themselves on a regular basis the way that they used to be, what do? You load up the show with guests, which is exactly what I am doing today. Now, part of it is because of the reason we are here, and I'll use more baseball terminology, it is a doubleheader. Where I am broadcasting from literally almost within reaching distance of touching out and grabbing a horse here along the main straightaway would be that we're here to tell you more about the racing that takes place, not just at Hoosier Park, or not just, I'm going to call it by the old name of Indiana Downs, but that's not been the name of it for some time, but kind of the two more permanent racing facilities here in central Indiana. There frankly is a third, Ellis Park, but there's like some weird line around Kentucky that's drawn down there, so I'm not really sure what state that is in, but it's close to Evansville. It's like just right down US 41 from it. But no, there's like racing that takes place all across the state, like at county fairs and events like that. It was the case when I grew up in Harrison County and having the fair down in Corden. Well, we're going to tell you about some of the things that have led up to get to this point because literally there is a full day of racing here. So you hear the amount of races we bring to you, whether it's from Anderson or from down in Shelbyville on a regular basis here on the radio station. They're literally happening in front of us. Not right now, but believe me, you'll know when they're taking place because the guy announcing them is like 15 rows back of me, and the horses are frankly closer. So we'll tell you about that. Tony Renz, who's the executive director of the Indiana Standardbred Association, will join us coming up a little bit later on this hour. A couple other guests will join us throughout the course of the show. So I will be kind of weaving that conversation in throughout the 3 hours that I am with you. And then John is here from 3 until 6. And the good news is, you know, where I'm at in the permanent grandstand, we're currently covered from a sun perspective. It is a mixture of sun and clouds, and I can tell you it's not cool, but it is just a little bit cooler today than it has been for the last few days, and thank goodness for that. By the time John gets here at 3, the sun will have shifted, and I'm pretty sure that John will be a walking billboard for his weight loss, and he will do his show from 3 until 6, Harry Carey in the bleacher style. Now, he may have a little less old style in him while he's doing the show, but you may see John topless from 3 until 6 o'clock. And you can celebrate or commiserate that whichever way you want to go with it. The non-horse racing guest that we will have on the show today is as follows. Coming up in the next segment of the show, you know, once we get to late July, early August, and from that point in time forward, you know, the Colts conversations tends to literally blot out the sun. Once training camp starts, it's Colts, 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 Colts. And obviously, given what I do for the Indianapolis Colts as preseason television, as post-game show host on the radio network, I'm more than fine with that. But you know what? If I wanted to talk Colts frankly, I can just talk Colts. We can talk Colts. The phone number is open for you, 317-239-1070. You can always tweet to me at Greg Rakestraw if you'd like to interact in that fashion. And again, if you know me, the bat phone is readily accessible. Just text me and we'll figure it out. We'll talk about it on the radio. And I'll get to talking about the Colts coming up in a matter of moments. But I thought from a guest standpoint, why don't we do something a little bit different on the program today? And so next segment of the show, we'll talk a little college football. Now, we will be doing so with a guy whose name and voice you should recognize, A, because he's been in the college sports sphere for the last 25 or so years, and B, he's also quasi-local. He's region. He's Purdue. For the last 14 years, Jerry Palm has been a part of CBS Sports, and especially as their bubble analyst, their bracket analyst, their bracketologist, whatever you want to describe it as, you would hear more of Jerry talking college hoops than you would talk college football. I have been in this seat long enough and done this long enough where I remember Jerry from his websites before he then went to CBS, which was collegebcs.com and collegerpi.com. Well, now that Jerry is no longer with CBS Sports, he is kind of back in that space. So Jerry will join us, talk a little college football coming up during the 12:30 segment of the show. Again, Tony Renz from the Standard Bread Association will join us at 12:45 during the 1 o'clock hour of the program. In fact, at 1:30, a man whose voice, frankly, I'm not sure needs any more introduction this time of year here, because you hear him on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan on a, well, every third night kind of basis. That would be John Nolan, the radio voice of the Indiana Fever. And the Fever, let's face it, we need to kind of grade them on a curve right now. I mean, they had just seemingly figured out, here's how you play without Caitlin Clark. Then you lose 2 point guards on the same night for the remainder of the season. The fact that you have had multiple players have to come in and get significant minutes while basically playing on a 7-day deal or a hardship medical deal, it's frankly stunning. The Fever are above 500 at this point and in a playoff position. So John Nolan will join us coming up at 1:30. Another guest from the Indiana Standard Bread Association and the activities here at the track will join us in the 1 o'clock hour as well. So it'll be the case in the 2 o'clock hour. And I know this is a story that Jake touched on for his Feel Good Friday last week, and it's a story I'm connected to as well. This is the time of year, well, if you just kind of randomly turn on your television, you'll see Little League baseball players or Little League softball players. For example, if you were flipping around and saw ABC on Sunday afternoon, you saw kids from Southern Indiana playing in the Little League Softball World Series Championships, kids from Floyd's Knobs, literally the town east of where I grew up, the town that I lived in when I was born, Floyd's Knobs, Indiana, home of the Floyd Central Highlanders. Well, they finished as the runners-up in that competition, but there's other teams that are competing in various competitions of youth baseball. And another one from right here in our own backyard also finished as the runners-up, and that is the kids from the Indy RBI program. And what RBI stands for is Reviving Baseball in the Inner Cities. This is a program that Major League Baseball has run for many years. The Indianapolis RBI chapter is the largest operating group outside of a Major League Baseball market in the country. I was fortunate enough many years ago to be on the board. That is no longer the case. Believe it or not, I do eventually say no to some things. Clearly not filling in gigs on 107.5 The Fan, or you like no to meals. But occasionally I will say no to, hey, I've served my time on the board. I think I have to be done here. But Bob Haney has run that program, at least at a senior level, and has coached their U18 team. Bob is also the baseball coach at Tech High School. Those kids from Indianapolis finished as the runners-up in the RBI World Series. It was the first time in years they had qualified for the World Series because they compete with teams from, I think, Detroit, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Chicago, Kansas City, and St. Louis. I think that's kind of the group in which the Indy RBI kids play. It was their best finish in forever. And so Bob will join us during the 2 o'clock hour of the show. There may be one or two others that I would call the unscheduled, somewhat celebrity pop-ins that take place during the course of the program. So there may be other guests as well. Believe me, there is time for you. 317-239-1070. At Greg Rakestraw on Twitter is how you can interact with me. I do want to welcome Eddie Garrison. Normally there is direct line of sight between conversations between host and Eddie. That is not the case today, but thankfully Eddie knows my speech patterns, frankly, all too well at this point. Garricinho, good afternoon. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I know the end result of it. I know the back and forth of it, and we'll talk more about it at about 1:30. How was the Fever game last night?
Disappointing. I said this last night when I was doing the post-game show. I was like, these are games that the Fever just simply cannot lose. Like, you're getting down to the final month of the season. You've got a dozen or so games remaining on your schedule, and you've got to play Minnesota 3 times in those final 12 games. And those are games that you're probably not going to win just because they're the best team of the W right now. And that first game on the 22nd between the two teams could ideally be the time frame when Caitlin Clark comes back. So there's going to be an adjustment period. So you have to take advantage of teams like Dallas when they're on their schedule, when the standings are so tight right now in the WNBA. And not to mention, they were without Arike Ogunbowale, their second best player last night. And Paige Becker goes 6 for 20. And if you're going into the game and you said, hey, you don't have your second best scorer and your best player for the opposing team struggles with efficiency of making shots, how do you feel? Like, oh, well, they're certainly going to win. And last night just was not the case. They just did not come out prepared. They came out flat in the first quarter, got it back on track in the second, and then kind of had a repeat of the first quarter to start the third quarter as well. So not a good night last night for the Indiana Fever.
The point guard of the Indiana Fever right now is who?
Right now it's Kelsey Mitchell in terms of the starters, and then they brought in Odyssey Sims on a hardship deal, and she was coming off the bench last night, played 14 minutes, and kind of struggled just because there was zero practice time pretty much for her with the group. So she was kind of confused out there. There were a couple of turnovers because of it, and I don't know when Caitlin comes back, but right now it's Kelsey Mitchell and Odyssey Sims.
So, again, you just helped me make my point. Aren't we judging everything from an Indiana Fever perspective? Can you tell there's a race going on behind me right now?
Not at all.
Aren't we judging everything on a curve? In other words, like if I look back at the end of the 2025 season, whatever it may be, and again, for those that don't follow it, Fever are 2.5 games up of a playoff spot with 11 games left to go. And I'm sure Eddie's got the exact math on this, but more or less, Caitlin Clark has played basically 1/3 of the game so far this year. Am I in that proper neighborhood from a numbering standpoint, Eddie?
She's played 13 games, and they've played 20 without her.
There you go. So a little bit, just slightly above that, but you get the general idea. And so what you just said about, well, they brought in this point guard on a hardship contract. She basically didn't have a chance to practice with the team, and she is playing with the team significant minutes. In other words, I don't think there is much that we can judge this group on in terms of, what carries over to 2026, because it's just been kind of one of those years that you get what you get from an injury standpoint. Fair to say?
It is fair to say, and also when you look at the team right now, there's not a whole lot of players that are currently under contract for next year. Like Sophie Cunningham, Kelsey Mitchell, they're on one-year deals. The only players that you for sure have back right now are Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. Those are the only two players that are pretty much signed for the remainder of this season and into next year, just because of the new CBA that's coming. A lot of players signed one-year deals, and so it's going to be a totally new roster probably next season for the Fever. I would anticipate Sophie Cunningham coming back just because of how much she has outwardly spoken about playing for the Indiana Fever and playing with Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White. So it could be a totally different roster next year. So that's kind of why I value these games still, even though you may view it as a curve. Without Caitlin, I think with the fact that they've played more games without Caitlin than they have with her, I think that also has a little bit of weight into it too.
All right, anything official, I don't even say official, anything that is educated inside information from and again, you're not official with the team, but you're listening to every game, you're connected to people. People almost I think out of like some sense of hope have gone, well, she missed 2 weeks this time, 3 weeks this time, so she'll miss this many weeks this time. Any sort of inside intel as to when, in theory, we might see her back on the court again?
They've been incredibly vague about it, but with what I can piece together from how they've been treating it, and they're starting to ramp up her conditioning a little bit off the court. I'm identifying that Friday, August 22nd game, so a week from Friday, as the game that she's going to return, because Stephanie White said on this program, I think it was last week or if not 2 weeks ago, that need to see practices, meaning multiple from Caitlin Clark with the team. And just based off of the schedule at the time when the calendar turned to August, there was a 2.5-week stretch where they were playing, every other day. There were a couple of stretches where they had 2 days between games, but they play Sunday against Connecticut on the road, and then they're off until that Friday the 22nd. So I would envision that 4-day break, or whatever you want to call it, right there is when they're going to get Caitlin back on the floor to string together some practices and hopefully get her back on the floor in terms of game action on Friday the 22nd.
Final thing I'll bring up, and John Nolan and I will have a similar conversation about an hour and a half or so from now. The thing that, to me, I'm not sure if I want to say a pleasant surprise. That sounds like a backhanded compliment. That's not what I'm insinuating. The thing that, through the injury issues, which Caitlin Clark had not been through at Iowa or obviously in her first year in the WNBA, there has not been this dramatic drop-off in terms of butts and seats or interest in the team, has there?
No, not really, not at all. And large part because there's still a lot of talented players on the Indiana Fever, and there's a lot of talented players across the WNBA. And all those fans that did purchase tickets prior to the season, when they were trying to get those tickets to see Caitlin Clark, are still showing up because it is the Indiana Fever.
You chime in whenever you feel appropriate, sir. Thank you very much. Eddie Garrison, back in the DriveHubler.com studios. We are literally like in the main grandstand. Like if you were here for like band day or any sort of other venue, you'd be paying top dollar for the seats that I have right now. And we are right on the front straightaway, and there will be live horse racing action taking place throughout the course of the show. 317-239-1070 is the telephone number. From a Colts perspective, we're kind of in just a brief lull. 9 days in between game 1 and game 2 of preseason football. The rare back-to-back days off from a practice standpoint. Yesterday was a true day off. Those guys went at it hard, and that was kind of by design from Shane Steichen. And obviously the weather conditions played into that too. I can tell you from being out there 3 days running, it was an absolute swamp that they practiced in at 4 o'clock. Saturday, Sunday, and Monday of this week. And so today is a day full of meetings for the players. They're back at Westfield for a couple of more days. 1 day of joint practice tomorrow against the Packers from 3 until 5. That will be a madhouse. That will be a full house. That is a sold-out house. So if you do not have tickets for that practice session tomorrow, I'm not sure you can scalp practice tickets if that's allowed, legal, or frowned upon. Really don't know. But if you don't have a ticket, find somebody that does if you really want to go and watch the Colts and Packers practice tomorrow. In case this hasn't gotten to you, because so much of my focus as a broadcaster, I think that carries over to fans' focus, in the preseason. You're focused about your team. And yes, the Colts starters are supposed to play. I'm sure there will be a couple of exceptions. But the Colts starters are scheduled to play for a quarter on Saturday. But it will not truly be 1 versus 1 in terms of Packers offense versus Colts defense. In case you hadn't heard, Jordan Love is out for the rest of the preseason. Jordan had a procedure on his non-throwing thumb, his left thumb yesterday, got hurt playing in game number 1. Again, they think he's back for the regular season opener, but you will not see Jordan Love playing on Saturday when the Packers are here for a 1 o'clock kickoff. That doesn't, frankly, change, I think, how the Colts need to approach this game in terms of getting guys reps, but it does maybe change what you would say this Colts defense. I wouldn't say how you judge them, but I'm sure there are some of you screaming at your radio dial right now saying, wait a minute, the Packers with the other guys, the backup quarterback with Malik Willis, kind of torched the Colts last year, week number 2, and you would be right about that. Even if the Colts knew what was coming, they seemed like they could not be able to stop it. But just a note to consider as far as the game coming up on Saturday. If you're asking or curious or whatever, kind of my overarching thoughts on Colts training camp so far. Here would be 2 or 3 observations that I would share with you. One, there has not been great separation at the quarterback position in terms of one guy looking better than the other. And I do think that tips the hand towards Anthony Richardson. I do think that battle will continue all the way through the Cincinnati game. Now, I'm not sure what Shane's playing plans are for the guys next Saturday. He hasn't kind of revealed that just yet. But I do think that the competition will continue behind closed doors because remember, the last practice that is not just open to you as the public, but to us that cover the team is tomorrow afternoon. That's it. Everything else goes back to 56th Street as of next week and is behind closed doors. We'll see guys like stretch, go through individual drills, and we'll be asked to leave, and that's it. In other words, I don't expect a starter to be named next week. I think it's still very much a legitimate competition. But if it's going to be a tie, I've always felt that was going to go to the incumbent, which would be Anthony Richardson. And I've probably switched my mind like twice on that over the course of not just the last 2 or 3 weeks, but the off-season workouts, then for the start of training camp. And even though Jones gets the start and then Richardson gets the next quarter and a half, whatever, if you ask me in my heart of hearts who I think the starting quarterback is on September the 7th for this football team, my answer today, which is always subject to change, my answer would be Anthony Richardson is going to be the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts on September the 7th. Talk about that. Feel free at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Probably is the best way to interact with me over the course of the next couple of segments of the show. The other thing that I will say is this, and I forget whom I was probably filling in for John at some point in time in July. And this was like a month ago before I left for a whole different country for a week, which was glorious, by the way. When I basically said, you know what, folks, I really have 2 questions. And a month later, I have the same 2 questions. Are you going to be a playoff team? Who's your starting quarterback? And because of that, there is largely a lack of questions at other position battles. In other words, I think I know the 3 running backs the Colts are going to keep on their roster. I think I know the 6 wide receivers the Colts are going to keep on their roster. I think I got an idea as to the 4 tight ends the Colts are going to keep on their roster. There's not much in the way of position battles going on. You have the obvious one at quarterback, and then you kind of have one going on at cornerback because of injuries. Because Justin Wally had won the job, and now he's gone for the season. And if Kenny Moore's your slot guy and he's dealing with a knee injury, you're going to put Mooney Ward in a glass case at this point to make sure he's all right. Nick Cross a little bit, dinged up. We don't know what the carryover is going to be on that front. There's a guy that was not really going to be part of the conversation that suddenly is getting reps of the one. His name is Jonathan Edwards. He's an undrafted free agent up to, I think he had 24 tackles last year. That's the guy wearing 35 that's getting reps of the ones. So that is kind of a position battle almost because of injury. Other than that, I know the starting defensive tackles. I know defensive end's going to be a rotation. I know Zaire Franklin is back at practice full bore, appears to be good to go. In the offseason, we had kind of penciled in Jalen Carlisle as the other linebacker, and he's been hurt. It looks like it's, Joe Bacci, who had the interception on Thursday night, and while he was a special teamer for Lou Anarumo in Cincinnati, knows the defense, knows the system. And right now, I think the other starting linebacker opposite Zaire Franklin is a battle between he and the local product in Cam McGrone. I would probably lean more towards Joe at this point in time. Even the kicking battle, it's not much of a battle. It's going to be Spencer Schrader's job. It certainly seems that way going forward. So it's unique in that we have the biggest and most ultimate question about this football team: who the quarterback is going to be. And that tends to, again, supersede everything and everybody. But in terms of other battles, I'm not sure how much of one there is going to be. The other thing that I will give you from my time of observing Colts practice over the last 2-3 weeks at this point, especially if the injuries at cornerback can be resolved. Defensively, I think we might be all right. Because either one of these two things is happening. Because the defensive line's getting pressure in the backfield a good amount of time. Either there's finally enough depth at the defensive end position to go with Stewart and Buckner, who I think are as good of a defensive tackle pairing as you have in the league. And those guys are getting to the quarterback on a regular basis. Or there's a little more problem with the Colts offensive line in terms of pass rush. And frankly, we learned more about that in scenarios like last week against Baltimore on Tuesday where the Colts did well. And now let's see what happens tomorrow in that open practice against the Packers. If the Colts defensive line gets pressure in that setting, the way they have been doing on a semi-regular basis at camp, it's kind of like the groundskeeper scene in Major League. Maybe the Colts defensive line isn't too, maybe they're okay. So those are some of the things that have been weighing on my mind. If you want kind of a 30,000-foot view as to what's going on at Colts camp. We owe you a timeout. Again, we are live at the Indiana State Fair. Again, the Trotters are literally going down the backstretch as we speak. I am here until 3. JMB is here from 3 until 6. I'll make sure every chair is nice and warm, just the way he likes it. Back in a moment, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Thanks to Eddie Garrison. He sometimes gets called Garrisino from his days of being the board op for Soccer Saturday, which is normally when you hear me on this radio station for 2 weeks a year. Obviously, you've got the normal shows in which I make guest appearances on. Ironically, this is not one of them, but I am filling in for Jake Query today as he is south-siding it up in Chicago, checking a little White Sox Day baseball. We are live at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. The Beatles are not playing today, but the standardbred horses are. There are races that will be going on all throughout the course of the day, and we'll tell you more about them with Tony Renz coming up in the next segment of the show. However, when I fill in, as I do like once a month, at once every couple of weeks, etc., there are sometimes just old friends. I'm like, hey, this is a good chance for me to catch up with this person from a both on-air and off-air conversation. And a buddy of mine is doing something old that is new again, and that is kind of direct-to-consumer, where you can find him and his work on both college football and college basketball. After a very successful run on CBS Sports for the last 14 years, Jerry Palm has gone back the independent route, and he joins us now on our Eddie. Is our hotline sponsor today, or is it insert your name here?
Insert name here.
Point? All right. Call. I'll give you John Griffin's cell phone number. You can sponsor the hotline for this show for today, the rest of the week, or for the rest of forever. Jerry Palm joins us now. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. I am in the grandstand at the Indiana State Fair, and I know the thing that you are as passionate about as you are college football and college basketball would be bands. So the last time you would be here to watch a band competition like State Fair Band Day?
Actually, I have never been to State Fair Band Day.
Well, now you got time to do it. You should come down next year.
Yeah, I've been to the state band contest. You know, the
sure.
one at the Dome. It's the end of the fall, but I've only been to the State Fair a couple of times, which is, I guess, kind of weird because I've lived in Indiana now for 30 years. But I've only been to the State Fair a couple of times.
You do live about as far away in Indiana as you can get, though, from Indianapolis. So I understand that. So, again, I gave your old website addresses from the pre-CBS days, collegebcs.com, collegerpi.com.
Correct.
Where can folks find your work now?
It's going to be palmbrackets.com. And it'll have both football and basketball. Right now, it's just football, which I launched yesterday. Because obviously the football season starts next week, so there's a little less urgency for basketball, but I'm working on that too, and hope to have that up in a couple of weeks, and we'll be able to do both football and basketball. And like you said, it's kind of the way it used to be for me. That's how I got started. On my own back in 1994 when it was just basketball, and the only people doing it was me and Joel and Artie. In fact, we started at the same time, I found out. Each of ours, I think he started at ESPN in 94, and my first bracket was also 94. So, it's a lot different now, a lot different landscape now. I'm looking forward to being able to do things that, I wasn't always able to do with, editors telling me what I should and should not do.
Well, let's face it, there's a couple of pressing things from basketball standpoint we want to get to, and then we'll talk about the more kind of current relevant stuff in terms of the upcoming football season. And first of all, just a personal thing, because I've known you for 25 years, and so it was so cool for me to see a buddy of mine on one of the most prominent television shows that sports fans think of, and that being obviously all of the lead-up to the debuting of the brackets in March. What was it like for being a guy that started his own blog and research to being a regular on March Madness coverage on CBS? That had to be so stinking cool for as long as that got to be a part of your career.
Yeah, at the beginning it was surreal. It's something when I started doing this, I thought the number of people who would be interested would fit comfortably in a minivan. So, it was a little more than that. In fact, it was a lot more than that. And, being part of the selection week shows in particular, and when they started doing them, the pre-selection show in February was always really the highlights of the year. Being out in New York with the CBS sports people, and that was always the highlight of the year. And the February show, I would get to, meet with some of the committee people, and so that I would get to pick their brains about stuff. So that's something that I'll miss. But it was a surreal experience for me to be part of the network that is the home of college basketball for that long.
I remember I got to do a broadcast on CBS Sports Network about 9 years ago, and I got a CBS Sports Network polo, and I didn't keep the Mike flag, but took a picture of the Mike flag. And I'm like, hey, at some point they're going to give me a blazer, and you got to work with the guys at the Blazers, which again is beyond cool.
Yeah, I didn't get a blazer, but I got to work with the guys.
But you were in close vicinity to them, which is better than I was able to do.
I learned a lot working with those people.
Yes.
Guys like Clark Kellogg and Jay Wright in recent years, and Greg Gumbel. Those really a lot of very smart analyst type people on both the CBS and the Sports Network.
No doubt about that, and God rest Greg Gumbel's soul. Now, with that, we're not expanding this year. It gets talked about all the time. As a guy that literally does this for a living, your thoughts about us staying pat at 68 for at least one more year?
Well, I say that minimizes the damage for another year. I am steadfastly in favor of going back to 64. That was the perfect number. But, I'd feel better about it if they were, expanding the tournament for, like, Dayton, Loyal of Chicago. Teams like that. I just picked a couple of A-10 teams. But, teams like that, then I would feel better about it.
Sure.
But I don't believe that for a minute. I think we're going to get, big conference teams that are, 2 games below 500 in their league, and just barely above 500 overall. And those are the kinds of teams that we're probably going to see in those spots. And the thing is that nobody's really into these games. I mean, I don't know what the TV ratings say. I don't pay that much attention to it for the first 4. But, if you're filling out a bracket, you're waiting for those games to end so you know what your bracket looks like that you have to fill out.
Again, Jerry Palm Brackets. Just simply search that. You'll be able to find Jerry's great work. So let's kind of shift to what starts all of 8 days from now, and obviously starts in the biggest of ways a week from this Saturday. That is college football. Obviously now it is a race to 12 in terms of making the postseason. Kind of what all will you be chronicling and looking for in the early weeks of the season?
Yeah, well, there's some big games, including right off the bat. Texas, number 1 in the preseason polls, number 7 seed in my bowl projections for the college football playoff. But part of the reason for that is they're opening the season at Ohio State. Later in the season, they have to go to Georgia. And it's nice to be the preseason number 1. People think you're the best team in the country, and they might very well be. And you could still lose at Ohio State and lose at Georgia and finish 10-2. That's probably good enough to get you in the playoff, if that's what they do. And obviously better than that would be impressive. But those are really tough games. They're already an underdog at Ohio State. The Georgia game's in November, so a little premature for a line on that. But I think it's going to be – there's some really good non-conference games. Every year there are. And it's funny because the Indiana coach, Signetti, was kind of ripping the SEC for how they schedule. And there are certainly some weird things about how they schedule, but the better teams in that league usually have one pretty good non-conference game, and he's pretty much committed to not ever having one. So, which is, last year I think it hurt him. But you can't really blame them for a bad non-conference schedule when you're rebuilding a program, and they had a tremendous turnaround, probably never been equal turnaround last year, and now they'll get a few more tough games in the conference this year. So we'll see how they do. But there are some really good non-conference games this year, and Texas is playing one of those right away in week 1.
We've never had number 1 versus 2 out of the chute, and that is exactly what we have this year. Again, palm brackets, and Jerry and I will have this conversation during the college football season, the college basketball season. When you hear me, good chance we'll have Jerry on the show on a semi-regular basis. Good luck with the new venture, my friend. We'll cross paths soon.
All right, thank you.
You got it. Jerry Palm joining us on the Insert Your Business Name Here guest line. Tony Renz from the Indiana Standardbred Association joins us in vivo next. We are live at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. In fact, we're at the grandstand so close the horses can hear me as they come down the main straightaway. You're listening on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Indiana State Fair, and it's funny. Jerry Palm was just on with us, talked about, I've only been in the State Fair a couple of times. Again, he grew up not grew up, but spent the last 30 years in Merrillville. And I kind of had a similar experience growing up as a kid. Like my grandfather, who was like the last of my generation in southern Indiana to actually farm for a living, he was up here at the Indiana State Fair on a regular basis. If we went to the State Fair where I grew up, you crossed the river and you went to Louisville, just because that was 30 minutes away and Indianapolis was 2 hours away. So now for the last 20 years, I've lived less than 20 blocks from the Indiana State Fair, or I have called basketball games in the Corteva Coliseum for the better part of the last 10 years. And because I'm local, when I'm usually sitting where I'm at now, or at least I'm driving through the Christmas lights at least a couple of times that take place here at the Indiana State Fair. But today at the Fairground Racetrack, it is standardbred racing literally all the time. And, of course, they've been a great partner of ours in the Fan. And Tony Renz, who is the executive director of the Indiana Standardbred Association, joins us now. First of all, you've been hanging out with us for like an hour, so thank you for doing that, and thanks for having us today.
Absolutely, Greg. Great to see you. Great to meet with you. I think today's the first day we've got a chance to work together, but I've been watching you from afar. I watch a lot of high school sports.
Well, you and I, we learned we have pretty similar backgrounds in terms of being from the Louisville area and kind of growing up around the horse racing industry, but not necessarily in the horse racing industry. Obviously, you are. So give us the Cliff Note speech. When I say the Indiana Standardbred Association, what all does that entail?
Has rich history, especially in the state of Indiana. Harness racing has been going on in this state since the mid-1800s. It's been going on at this fairgrounds since its inception, which I believe is like 1892.
Wow.
The track was actually one of the first things built here. It was the center, and then they began to build everything around it. It goes all the way back to the Dan Patch, and you guys were with us last Friday night at the Hoosier Park when we had the Dan Patch Stakes. Dan Patch was a horse from Indiana, Oxford, Indiana, that was world known. But bringing this back to today is the culmination of a lot of hard work, a lot of risk that people take. These horses were born 2-3 years ago, and they were purchased at a sale that Jamie McCumber is going to come up later in your program, talk about that sale. And then they get trained for those 2-3 years, and then they go out to these county fairs, which we've got 9 county fairs. Indiana Racing touches all 92 counties, and physically we race in 9 of the counties. And then they try to get to today. And today's the Governor's Cup. And you've got to qualify to be in these consolation races that we're watching right now. And then later today at 5 o'clock, we kick off the Governor Cup Championship. And that's kind of the Super Bowl for these horses. So we see what all that hard work, that time, that money, that blood, sweat, and tears that these owners, trainers have put into this, and see where it comes from. And
again, when you grow up in southern Indiana, Louisville, as you and I both did, horse racing, it's Churchill Downs. Well, that's thoroughbred racing. And obviously, there's a pretty rich thoroughbred history. And obviously, I rattled off the different places you can go watch racing in the state of Indiana at the beginning of the show. How is this industry, the standardbred, different than the thoroughbred industry?
This is a lot more family-oriented. So when you see these horsemen out here, I was talking with John off the air a moment ago. The person, Jeff Deaver, won a race 2 races ago. Well, his parents raced. His grandfather raced. His great-grandfather raced. His daughter is now starting to get into the program at the young age of 12 years old. And so it becomes a generational thing where it's part of the family. And it's not a question of, are you going to get into it? You're sucked into it. And it's fantastic. And you spoke about Churchill Downs, Louisville. There was also a standardbred track down there. Louisville Downs at one time was a very big program down there in the Midwest for standardbred racing.
And part of this, and I've heard the other hosts and features over the last few weeks talk about this, and it's part of, you kind of dropped it in casual conversation. Again, it's easy to think about Hoosier Park, or if you go down to Evansville, Ellis Park, whatever the case may be, but there are racing that takes place at 9 of the facilities. Most of them are county fairgrounds. So I guess just more thoughts on that. Like I said, I grew up with it in the Corden area, which is where this is in the southern part of the state. I don't think the average Indiana resident knows that there's standardbred racing that takes place in places other than Anderson, Indiana.
Absolutely. You're talking about Elkhart. We go to Connorsville. We go to Frankfort, Converse, Kentland, Kendallville, Harrison County down in your neck of the woods. Shelbyville has a very beautiful track and grandstand down there that horse racing built. I mean, that's what the money that went into that facility came from horse racing. And it's one of those things, again, it's down home racing when you go to these county fairs versus going to a parimutuel track like Hoosier Park. This is very down home feel, and you can go back into the barns and you can actually watch physically, get up close and personal. Now at Hoosier Park, it's a little more regulated there, and you're not going to be able to get that close and personal. But here, especially today, this is a celebration day for all of county fair racing. The
people that race at these county fairs and at a place like this, do they get to race much outside of the state of Indiana, or is almost everything done here in the Hoosier State?
I'd say probably 90% are racing here in the Hoosier State. Now, several own horses that are sired in other states, and they'll go race those in other states. There's some big programs out here. You'll see some people might have, there's one gentleman, Ron Burke, he's got over 400 horses worldwide. And so he's racing New Zealand, all over the place.
I believe we're on race 6 or 7 of the day. How many more races do we have left to go here today?
You got one more race in the consolation group.
Okay.
So that's race 8. And then we'll stop. We'll take a break at 5 p.m. We come back on, and that's the championships. And we have 8 races of those, each division. So you have 2-year-old, 3-year-olds, and then you break it down by the gates.
Obviously, your main function to be here today is to, talk to us, welcome us, talk about the horse racing. But what's your favorite thing to do at the fair that doesn't involve horse racing? Favorite booth to visit, etc.
The pineapple sherbet one.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a beeline for the key lime shake when I go to the dairy bar.
I've seen that too. I think I'm in with you on that.
It's one building across that way. We'll take a long break or something. Thank you so much, and a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much also.
Again, Tony Renz, Executive Director of the Indiana Standardbred Association, kind of join us. More horse racing guests as the show goes along. We are very guest heavy, but the next segment is an open segment of the show. So you got something that you want to say? Now's the time. 317-239-1070. Tweet to me at Greg Rakestraw or my buddy Brant. Did you know the bat phone? Just text me and you'll make the show. Back with more in a moment. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. We're hanging out at the Indiana State Fairgrounds, and specifically we are at the track at the Indiana State Fairgrounds, which obviously in the month of May we talked about things like the, Hoosier 100 back in the day and going dirt track racing here. During the State Fairgrounds, or during the State Fair, we're talking about horse racing, and particularly standardbred or trotter racing that takes place here at 38th Street. And a full day of activity taking place. Well, it's been going on most of the morning, and here in the afternoon, I think there's one more race left to go, I believe, for today in terms of this morning session. And then the evening session kicks in at 5, which is why JMV will be here from 3 until 6 as well. And I have not rotated chairs yet. We'll figure that out and work on that as the show goes along. Greg Rakestraw filling in for Jake Query, who gets a well-deserved day off because yesterday Jake had like a triple header. He filmed Query and Schultz at the ISC Sports Network yesterday morning, did his radio show from noon until 3. Then he and Derek were working at the Dairy Bar, literally just down the main drag here at the State Fairgrounds. So he did 3 things. He needed a break today. So Jake is on the south side of Chicago enjoying some Chicago White Sox Day baseball. And, that needs to be an option for me, too, at some point in time. Go have name your own section day. Just ask for the entire left field bleachers because nobody else is going to sit there with you, and just kick back and relax. And knowing that I got to call some of Colson Montgomery's games as a high school basketball player and as a high school baseball player, I have loved seeing what he has done for the White Sox. They're not competitive yet, but they could have been worse than last year, frankly. 9 home runs, I think, in his first 31 games. And he's played 31, so you have that kind of these odd and quirky stats. Only 2 other players have done something like that over the years, et cetera. One of the guys, first of all, his name was Zeke, which makes that cool, like back in the 30s. And the other guy was Jose Abreu that's done that. That's it. In the history of the Chicago White Sox, which I'm pretty sure is about 125, 130 years, that he's in the top 3 in terms of home runs hit, like his first month as a major leaguer. Man, really good for him. And especially given the fact that he was struggling early this year. He had kind of seemingly hit a wall at AAA. He got sent back to extended spring training for a couple of weeks, left Charlotte, and then came back. And clearly whatever they worked on out in Arizona clicked, because now he is legitimately tearing the cover off of the baseball, and he is all of 4 years removed from being a Southridge Raider. So good for him, good for Colson. And, Jake does the Chicago trip every year, so he was going to do that without whether Colson Montgomery were there or not. But obviously now he's got something and somebody from a local standpoint to go check out. Another guest from in fact, let me check that. John Nolan at 1:30. Another guest from the Standardbred Association will join us at 1:45. In the 2 o'clock hour of the show, Bob Haney of the Indy RBI program. They were the runners-up in the RBI World Series last weekend down in Florida. He'll be joining us. Another guest in terms of all the activity taking place here at the Indiana State Fairgrounds from a horse racing perspective will be joining us. And an unscheduled, now scheduled, somewhat celebrity pop-in for members of the Indy 11, one of whom is from England. And so let me kind of stop that and tell you about this. We got 2 players joining us, and I'll go look up the second in a moment. But the first one is the Indy 11's backup goalkeeper in Reese Charles Cook. And much like a backup quarterback, maybe you're a backup catcher, those are the ones that have kind of more time to think about things and have like unique perspectives on the world. And the one thing that you get in the sport of soccer would be like guys that are to some degree international tourists. Like, in case you didn't know, the Indy 11 can have 7 international players on their roster. Now, frankly, they have more, but if you have a green card, you do not count as an international player. You can have 7 guys that are on work permits or visas. I know soccer, visas and work permits, not so much. So something along those lines that can be on the team. And so Reese is a guy that has played in England for the last decade. And there are a lot of guys that want to come over here and experience playing in the States for a year or 2. And some guys get here and stay for the rest of their lives. To kind of like the head coach and Sean McCauley came over to play, went back to England to coach, and now has been coaching in the States for some time. But we have jokingly kind of called the series of things that Reese goes and does for the Indy 11, Reese Does America. Like, I am picturing a logo from like Beavis and Butthead Do America, like from 1997. Something similar as far as Reese is concerned. So anyway, today Reese is doing the State Fair for the first time. And seeing guys from other countries, and the late, great, and knowing this is Jake's show, and John would bring up the same reference, Robin Miller would do the same thing. Try to bring as many IndyCar guys from different backgrounds to experience the State Fair. Indy 11 are doing that, so Reese will stop by and hang out with us coming up at some point in time during the 2 o'clock hour of the show. Phone lines are open, 317-239-1070. This is probably your best chance to be on the program if there's something that you want to say. If I have not driven you off from listening to the show and you want to interact with me, 317-239-1070. I also tell friends, simply hit the bat phone if you're listening, as my buddy Brant has done. And he asked, I think, a very relevant question here. The Colts have a better shot making the playoffs with Richardson or Jones. Does it matter who's at the quarterback spot? Well, it always matters at the quarterback spot, but that is very much a legitimate question. The easy answer has been the ceiling for this football team is significantly higher with Anthony Richardson. That if he hits and hits for big plays and doesn't give the football away, that this offense can be so much more explosive that this team's best bet to be successful is with Anthony Richardson. But that the floor is significantly higher with Daniel Jones. And with a weapon like Jonathan Taylor, knowing that the wide receiver position is seemingly settled. And let me give you an example. Colts last year's 3 top receivers, Pierce, Downs, Pittman. Pierce a little banged up right now. But those 3 guys all had over 800 yards receiving last year. You know, the last time the Colts had 3 receivers go for over 800 yards was 20 years ago, was 2004. You know, it's funny, when you invest first and second round picks on a yearly basis, things tend to work out at said position. Michael Pittman, second round pick. Alec Pierce, second round pick. Josh Downs, third round pick. Behind them, A.D. Mitchell, who's going to get more reps because my guess is Pierce doesn't play. I think he'll play when the season starts. At least I don't know the extent of his injury, but I don't think he's going to play this coming Saturday because he got hurt on Sunday. He missed practice on Monday. We talk a lot about A.D. Mitchell, and right now he's your 4th receiver. It's why I tend to talk less about him. To me, this is a big year for Mitchell just because of what Mitchell does is going to tell you how much you'd want to spend on Alec Pierce because he is eligible for his next deal going into the 2026 season. You could argue that maybe the safe play is Daniel Jones. But I think the play that you want, and again, I have said the tie goes to the incumbent, the tie goes to the runner. When I am talking with Kevin Bowen, I use a Ryder Cup reference. You know, if it finishes 14-14, the team that had the cup gets to keep the cup. That's going to be Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson, I think it's a fair competition, but Anthony Richardson is going to be given every chance to win the job. So it's a fair question. Brant, I left part of your text out because I would disagree with you on one point, but again, we'll leave that for you and me. The other question that Brant had to ask me, what are your thoughts of the Pacers getting snubbed out of a Christmas Day matchup? Well, you kind of knew that was going to be the case without the Tyrese Halliburton injury, right? That all of, we had the big hubbub about the, opening day games and the Christmas Day games, et cetera. And had that injury not have happened, A, maybe we're talking about a world championship being here in Indianapolis. B, Yes, the Pacers are featured on NBA opening night. The Pacers are featured on Christmas Day. I mean, you have to go back like 20 years for the Pacers to be playing on Christmas Day, right? It's been like that level or that long. So I get it. I understand it. I kind of knew that was coming. You know, the Pacers get kind of like when we talked about this with Eddie last hour on the show, and we'll talk about it again with John Nolan in the next segment of the show when we start talking about the Indiana Fever again. Fever lost last night to the Dallas Wings, 81-80, a team behind them in the playoff standings and playoff push. But again, the Fever are so beaten up, you're down 3 point guards at this point. You're playing somebody that had like a day of practice with you and getting significant minutes. You have to grade on a curve, right? Well, the same thing happens for the Indiana Pacers. They are not going to be an NBA spotlight team without having Tyrese Halliburton, knowing that he is going to miss the entire season. So it's not a slight from the NBA. I get it. It's fair to question. I think the Pacers are probably in the 6, 7, 8 playoff seed discussion, not in the 1, 2, 3 playoff discussion. And so because of that, you are going to feature the best players and the best teams on Christmas Day. And the general thought is the Pacers are not going to be of that group this year. So it stinks because they would have been there, but this is a case where I completely understand it. 317-239-1070 is the telephone number. We can talk any and all things Colts if you would like. Again, Colts get back to practice against the Green Bay Packers tomorrow. One session. Session is sold out, 3 to 5. It is the last day of training camp in Westfield. Flew by quick. Literally was open for 22 days, and there was a 6-day gap when they were gone in Baltimore, like I was gone in Baltimore for 3 days last week. But your last chance to see the Colts in a non-game scenario will be tomorrow. But if you don't have tickets, you're not going to be getting in because, again, that was sold out. And I would imagine there'll be just a few melting cheeseheads there tomorrow as well. Obviously, game Saturday at 1 o'clock. We are on CBS 4, I think, for each of the next two. I should know this, right? You would think I would know what television station I'm going to be on Saturday. CBS 4 is going to be the broadcast home. And in case you were wondering, Rick Venturi is back with me on the broadcast. First of all, Joe Wright's was phenomenal. And the Indianapolis Colts have seemingly figured this out. I hope we lead the league in wins again at some point in time. I hope we lead the league in home playoff games at some point in time. Right now, what the Indianapolis Colts lead the league in is quality analysts. Because most teams would like to have one as good as Rick Venturi. We have Rick Venturi, we have Joe Wright, and we have Charles Arbuckle. And I'm fortunate to call all three of those guys friends, get a chance to work with those guys on a regular basis. So Rick and I have the television broadcast coming up on Saturday. Joe is back with me for the trip to Cincinnati next Saturday because Rick is going to focus on doing just home games this year from both a television standpoint and both a radio standpoint as well. So in case you were curious, wondering about that, that's the case. So Rick and I, and of course, Lara Overton. And yes, Carly Ursay-Gordon will be joining us during the third quarter of the game. So that, thankfully, that wonderful tradition that her father started of coming on board during a preseason telecast to answer our questions, that is going to continue with the next generation of the Ursay family as well. So we are very much looking forward to that during the third quarter of Saturday's game.
Greg, can we get you like a step stool or something, or make Joe Wright sit down? That way we can get some nice headshots there?
It's the other way around this week. I tower over Rick.
Oh, let's go.
I was on a conference call for another broadcast I'm on this weekend because, like in the soccer parlance, I tend to tower over and take up much more real estate than my normal analysts do. Like for the first 11 years of Indy 11 soccer, I'm kind of looking up a little bit to Brad Hodder. That's what happens. You have a goalkeeper, be the broadcast with you. This year, I got a couple of former midfielders that are with me on the Indy 11 broadcasts. It's Brad Ring, who wears a Child Schmedium shirt, and Dan Capsalis. And they average about 5'6" between the two of them. And so I look gargantuan next to them. Rick played in the Big Ten, but didn't play because of his height. I tend to tower over him. Joe, who is skinnier as a post-NFL player than as he was as a Division I college basketball player or an NFL player, like Joe towers over me. So that was rare for me to kind of have that, looking up sort of thing. The seesaw goes in the other direction in terms of my broadcast this week. But yes, it was talked about getting me some phone books or something like that. And for the Cincinnati game, perhaps we go that route. Or I know in Cincinnati, our booth is like teeny tiny. They'll be kind of shooting us from above. So maybe we'll both have that look, and Joe will just be closer to the camera. Eddie, I have had you, if not sitting on the sidelines, you have not chimed in terms of the company part of the program for the last hour. Being a solo host and an only child, I tend to dominate all of the airwaves. Anything that I have been leaving you out of in our conversations over the last hour or so?
I don't think so. Just the fact that, high school football does start this week. I know we've got some scrimmages going, and next thing you know, we're a couple of weeks away from the start of the high school football season. Didn't know if you had any thoughts on some of the central Indianapolis high schools on who's going to be good, who could be a sleeper team, players to watch for, that kind of stuff.
I think it's going to be a lot of the same, to be honest with you. And part of the story now, not just every couple of years, but every year now that the success factor is on an every 2-year basis. And it's funny, the first group of familiar names that I saw when I came into the parking area for the state fairgrounds earlier today was the IHSAA, front office. I literally spent 4 hours at the IHSA offices for a different broadcast meeting yesterday, and I'm like, you guys can't. I saw, and they were at Colts practice on Saturday night. I'm like, you guys can't. This is normally state championship season. You guys can't get away from me, but here we are, and you're stuck seeing me here again today. Now that it's every year, and teams will be going up and down, kind of every year, we'll have this conversation every August, where you almost feel like the need just to let people know, hey, New Pal's in 5A, or Decatur Central's in 6A, or Cathedral is in 5A. And so I think it will be a lot of the same teams, even though some of those teams are in different classifications. And so the thing that I would look forward to, and I'm by no means trying to shortchange the upcoming 9-week regular season in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but the fact is the Cathedral and New Pal are in the same sectional. And geographically, they should be. You've got 33 teams. I think there's one 5A game the opening week. It's not in that sectional. But there's 33 teams that are in 5A this year. And probably two of the best of them just happen to be 15, 20 minutes apart from each other. And so they're going to be in the same section. May not meet in week 1. They're probably going to meet in week 2. When Cathedral has been in 4A or 5A, they have won it. When they have been in 6A, they have been competitive, but they have normally stopped in the sectional or the regional round. Well, now they're back in 5A. And I know you really asked that question. As you hear me talk about Kyle Enright and the Decatur Central Hawks. Much like I am a proud Lanesville alum and look to work them in conversation at every opportunity, you do the same with Decatur Central. I think Kyle's bunch will be very competitive in their first year in 6A. And I will also tell you this. I maybe more so than the other sports that I do, because what I do from a high school football standpoint is so 6A dominant, because football is the one show that as of yet I don't do the pairing show for, and that's not a complaint from me. Bob and Paul have done that show since I think the beginning of Western civilization. I think the Mayflowers came here in '84. And then Bob and Paul did the selection show the next year. And so I kind of let those guys do it. I don't have to be as 30,000-foot view in football as I am in other sports. So, like, when I get that generic question from a lot of people, hey, who's good in football this year? And they expect like a 6-class answer. And in football, my answer tends to be much more of a 6A perspective because that is what I see. There's usually a week, first week of the sectional, I will see like the top 4A matchup or the top 3A matchup. Last year that was Danville and Brebeuf in 4A. This year it might be a 5A matchup because we have an extra team that's going to cause an extra week of the postseason at that level. But in football, I really see about a 6 or 7 team rotation. It's Carmel, it's Warren Central, it's Ben Davis, it's Lawrence North, it's Lawrence Central, a little bit of North Central. Just the way that it works, like HSC and Brownsburg both kind of appear, and I'll see Westfield like in week number 2. But I can give you a chapter and verse on those teams. The wide-angle lens for me tends to be 6A, and I'll go, hey, I've got to study 5A as the season goes along, knowing I'll see the 5A state championship game as well. Again, won by your Decatur Central Hawks a season ago. My thought would be, and this sounds like a cop-out, but I'll try to explain and make sure you know it's not, I kind of get the feeling I'm going to see a lot of the same teams I saw last year. In other words, Lawrence North was easily the best team in the MIC a season ago. And even though they had a lot of kids graduate, they bring back their top running back in Zay Moore. They bring back their top wide receiver, or one of their top receivers, in Monson Sales. And they have enough playmakers back defensively. I expect Pat Mallory's team to be really good. And they are the team that I see next week. My opening game on MyNDTV 23 is the battle for Lawrence Township. It's Lawrence Central at Lawrence North, second consecutive year. It is back to being the opening week of the season. That's my first game that I'll have next Friday night on WNDY. But the teams that ended up making their way to the regional / semi-state round in 6A, I think they're the teams we're talking about again. The defending champs in Brownsburg played a 2-quarterback system and did so as effectively as I have ever seen a high school team do it. Even if you knew one guy was the, quote, throwing quarterback and one guy was the, quote, running quarterback, didn't allow you to stop it any better between Fry and Stevens. Well, Fry is back. Stevens has graduated. And again, they've got a lot of their skill position kids back. They, much like Lawrence North, graduated some key pieces on defense. But I expect them, you bring a quarterback back with that little experience, they're going to be good. Center Grove, switch with their quarterback. Center Grove's going to be good every year. As long as Eric Moore is there, Center Grove is going to be good every year. Those two teams in Brownsburg and Center Grove played in the semi-state round last year, with Brownsburg getting the victory down at CG. Crown Point has established themselves, now surpassing Penn, as the best 6A team out of Indianapolis. They're out of Indianapolis. There are not that many of them. They're going to come down and play Pike, or they're going to play Pike in week number 2. That's a step in the right direction for them from a scheduling standpoint. But frankly, even though some of the last names are different, I think the teams that will be competing late into the season in 6A are largely the same. And I expect Eddie's Decatur Central Hawks to be very competitive in their first year because they got several Division I level kids that are coming back on that team. They may be successful enough in 6A to hang around in 6A, and as that school grows, they could be heading that direction anyway. The other team that I would say I think is a bit of a swing team this year, and just the quirk in the schedule, I don't see them until week 5, would be Warren. Warren last year were like monsters of the midway good defensively. But offensively, they were not good, and eventually that was their undoing as the season went along. New head coach in J.T. Whitaker. Mike Kirshner has stepped away from being a head coach, now is helping his son in Hamilton Heights. They lost a lot of starters, but, man, the couple of kids they bring back on defense, I mean, Jeremy Finch may be the best recruited player in terms of the state of Indiana. Caleb Elkins is not that far behind him. Offensively, what can they do? They may be the team that is best set up for growth from week 1 until game 10, the first game of the postseason. So there you go. Some quick thoughts on high school football. And yes, I get into the teeth of that as of next week. We'll take this quick timeout, a little Indiana Fever conversation. The racing activity has gone quiet. It sounds like something I would say at 16th and Georgetown. No, I'm like at 38th and Binford or Fall Creek. We're at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. It is a big day for the trotters, for the standardbred horses. The next racing session starts at 5 o'clock. You are listening on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Fever will inbound near their bench with 1.7 on the clock. Assistant coach Austin Kelly, who acts as an offensive coordinator, calls out a play. Sophie's the inbounder. Tosh between the rings. Sophie has it, scans. Kelsey comes to get it from the corner near the bench, heaves, no good, and the game is over. Final score, Dallas 81, Indiana 80.
You know, the Indiana Fever had this great tagline, which is absolutely spot on, and is talking just a bit of trash, saying every game is a home game. It was unique as I was driving around last night to hear some cheers when the Wings would score because of the Paige Beckers fans that were in attendance at last night's game. The voice that you just heard is the voice you're about to hear again in his first year as the radio voice of the Indiana Fever. John Nolan, of course, every game is heard on the Urban One family of stations, if not 93.5 and 107.5, the 93 WIBC. Good afternoon, my friend. How you doing?
Hey, Rick. All right, thanks for having me. I would be doing better if that shot for Kelsey went in or if they didn't dig themselves into a 17-point hole in the fourth quarter, but nevertheless, sun shining, a chance to get back to it on Friday night.
Well, it's 11 players that are on an average WNBA roster, correct?
I'd say 12 is the max you can have, and so I'm not sure out of the 13 teams the breakdown of how many have 12 versus 11 because, now to get into the weeds, the Fever were only carrying 11 for much of the season due to salary cap reasons. So, 11 or 12, though, on most rosters.
So you've had like 16 or 17 because of injury, hardship contracts, and things of that nature. I mentioned this with Eddie Garrison off the top of the show. Because of the injuries at one specific position, yes, it's a disappointing loss to Dallas last night. I get that they're a sub-500 team and won't be a playoff team. But you kind of take everything with a grain of salt right now for this basketball team, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And frankly, what the team did, what the Fever did on Saturday night, and not only defeating Chicago, but blowing them out the arena, I mean, that was really amazing in itself and probably set up then a false expectation for going forward. So I think, a few leftover thoughts that I have. One, because last night, the big part of the reason they lost the game is they wound up having more turnovers than assists, and that's just, not really going to cut it. It's frankly incredible that they had a shot at the last second to potentially still win the game nevertheless. Chicago is an ideal matchup because Chicago forces the fewest turnovers in the league. They just don't have guards that are ball-hawking type of pressuring players. Now, Dallas, they're only middle of the pack in terms of forcing turnovers, but one feeling from last night was that, and this is not news, right? This is a continuing issue in the WNBA, and Stephanie White once again was vocal about it afterwards. Officiating left something to be desired, and it felt like there were a lot of times where there was some mugging going on out there, and it went uncalled, and so that pressure and excess pressure really contributed to some of the ball control issues that the Fever had last night. Also, one thing that the Fever were able to unveil back on Saturday against Chicago was a zone defense that they had installed literally just before the game, a few hours before tip, as they were trying to get by with only 9 available players and players being out of position. Well, Dallas had, 48 hours to then study that tape and have a game plan for attacking the zone. And so the zone was not as successful last night. And then they did sign Odyssey Sims as a veteran point guard, and she made her debut last night. And I think for the big picture or the upcoming picture, the team will be better for having someone with her experience as a point guard. But nevertheless, last night, pretty tough situation being thrust into action with only one practice under her belt. So, not to completely alibi it, but it is, as you touched on there, understandable that they, weren't able to win this game given the adversity they're facing.
There are always things that as the team broadcaster when you travel with a team that even journalists, average fans don't know. I'm not trying to put you at risk of losing your job because I like you. I want to see you be successful with the Indiana Fever. But from a maybe more educated guess than most standpoint, any sort of inkling, feeling, best educated guess in terms of a Caitlin Clark return for this basketball team?
Fever inside information, I thought you were going to ask about what snacks we get on the plane because
Well, that's
I can
the
tell you
off-air
that.
conversation. That's very important to me, too.
Yeah. I'm sorry to let you down, though. I don't have any, added say. I think, again, going back to what Holly Rowe had reported on an ESPN ABC broadcast at the end of July, that, the second half of August would be a potential, time for Caitlin to be able to come back again, going off of what Stephanie White has said. It's going to be essential that Caitlin gets practices. I believe it's been said in a plural form, practices under her belt before she would return to game action. So as of today, she has not returned to be a full participant in practices. So when the team has been practicing, she's been going through individual workouts. And then, the latest sort of sign of progress is that she has been getting up and down the court, full court, but that is not with the full team. So we really are going to have to wait until we hear that she is a full participant in team practice. Before then, you can really start to have a radar or a bullseye on what date she could be coming back. Just as an update for anyone schedule-wise, home Friday night, 7:30 against Washington, on the road Sunday at Connecticut, and then a rarity as far as the schedule goes, 4 days off next week, Monday through Thursday. So Friday the 22nd, home against Minnesota, and I'm not saying that's when I think she will come back, but that would seem to be probably the first realistic date here ahead.
Again, John Nolan, radio voice of the Indiana Fever. Our guest, Greg Rakestraw, in for Jay Query. The Insert Your Name Here guest line on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. All right, so with that, if/when, and we think it's when and not if, for Caitlin at some point in time the remainder of this season, you simply plug her into this lineup. Is this still a team that on a given night, or 3 times in 5 nights, or 4 times in 7 nights, can still beat anybody else in the WNBA? Any question about that in your mind?
Well, I might have a question about Minnesota because, to the credit of the Minnesota Lynx, they've been in a class of their own. Because otherwise, one thing that's sort of been a line used throughout the season with the Fever has been some frustration over a lack of consistency. Well, truth is, that's applied to basically everyone in the league, almost with the exception of Minnesota. That said, Minnesota has had a couple of head-scratching games themselves, one of which they would probably say was when they gave up a 13-point lead against the Fever in the Commissioner's Cup championship game at home. But then on the other side, you could say, well, yeah, the Fever proved that they could win there in Minnesota in a game with some higher stakes. So I do think that with a healthy Caitlin Clark, the ceiling for this team is to contend for a championship. That said, right now, currently in 6th in the standings, that's where a loss like last night's does hurt you because they went from being in front of Las Vegas to falling behind Las Vegas. It would be nice with 8 teams making the playoffs. It would be nice to be in a top 4 spot, have home court advantage because of how outstanding the environment is at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So now the work is cut out for them to try to be in that top tier.
Finally, before we let you go, and I realize that you have spent literally as much time outside of Indianapolis as you have in Indianapolis since getting here because you travel everywhere with the team. How you like living in Indianapolis so far?
Oh, it's awesome. I had some great years in Fort Wayne, but, it's nice to be in the bigger city, the capital city, the surrounding central Indiana area, now starting to spend some time in Noblesville also with the upcoming G League season with the Boom. And in case anyone missed it, the arena at Innovation Mile had the official ribbon cutting just back on Friday. Should talk about the gem of the G League, and I know we're going to have a gem in the Horizon League coming at IU Indy in the next year or so as well. So, yeah, just really grateful to be a part of such an amazing community. Excited for the Colts now preseason already having kicked off, getting to watch you here this time of year, but for the real thing to come too. So yeah, really excited to be a part of the community.
And finally, have you been out to the Indiana State Fair yet in the last couple of weeks, John?
I have not, so that's on my summer bucket list yet. Definitely here with after the Fever had their longest road trip of the season, and then a pattern of off-day games, so not too much time to relax I am looking forward to getting to the fair. My radio broadcast partner, Bria Goss, I know she's a big fair enthusiast, so I'm going to have her show me the ropes.
I was going to say, you've got until, I think, basically Saturday knowing your travel schedule. So
yeah, I feel like I missed out last night with the Fever having the game because I think I used some milk from Query and Schultz. Is that why Jake's out today because he worked too hard last night?
Dairy overload, yes. No, he has a regularly scheduled White Sox matinee that he goes to. And so the dairy bar is still open despite the fact that Jake and Derek worked it last night. So when you make it out here at some point in time tomorrow and Saturday before you catch a plane to go to the Mohegan Sun, it will still be in action. I'll let you go. Enjoy the rest of your day, my friend. Thanks for the time and have a good call on Friday.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rick. Anytime. All the best.
You got it. John Nolan, of course, he and Bria Goss have every Fever game for you on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan and or 93 WIBC and pregame nearly every night and postgame too, hosted by Eddie Garrison. We are at a silent racetrack right now. That will not be the case coming up again at 5 o'clock. Governor's Cup action in terms of the standard-bred horses, that takes place today, and we'll keep telling you about it with a special guest when we come back. Live from the Indiana State Fair, it's Greg Rakestraw in for Jake Query, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Query here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan again. Right now I'm staring at an empty racetrack in a parking lot. That will be changing by the time that JMB is here and wrapping up his show, as he is here from 3 until 6. And we were joined earlier by Tony Renz. He works hand in hand with Jessica Barnes from the Indiana Standardbred Association, who joins us now. Jessica, how are you today?
I am fine. How are you?
Good, and I am learning more about the intricacies of not just racing at the 2 tracks that we are familiar with in central Indiana, in Anderson and in Shelbyville, but about the 9 different standardbred horse racing facilities often at county fairgrounds across state, which is frankly part of the reason why you have us out here on a day like today, correct?
Yes. So we have a series of races. Our county fair program is kind of, I like to equate it to the minor leagues when you think about baseball. So these are horses that are 2- and 3-year-olds, and they're just not quite good enough yet to go to the pari-mutuel track. So this gives them an opportunity to learn and grow, and they race at a series of races at the local county fairs across the state, and they get points, and they're going to come back here this evening. So the top 8 earners in each category are going to come back for their championship races tonight.
My guess is that you don't do this for the money, but having more money to do this with is nice. What sort of money is in this for these horsemen, these families, and they're running a circuit like this? So
the county fairs, they're going to race for $3,800 a race at the county fairs. And then if you make it to the championship, it's a $25,000 purse. So they're going to get a little bit of payback. So your first place finisher is going to take home 50% of that. Your second place finisher takes home 12%. 25%. Third place takes home 12%. Fourth place 8%, and fifth place 5%. So it gives them a little bit of feedback to keep them in business. Yep. And gives them that opportunity not to, these horses are just like human athletes. And so, not everybody peaks at 10 years old. Not everybody peaks at 16 years old. So 2- and 3-year-olds, it gives them an opportunity to grow and to train and to see if they're a viable racehorse for the industry. And again, part of this is to try to develop more talent and give those a chance to run in this breed in terms of Anderson on a regular basis, or obviously other facilities across the Midwest. Yes. Cool. Anderson is our standardbred racing facility here in Indiana. That's pari-mutuel. There are other tracks across the United States. So people, some people will go to those other tracks, especially when Anderson's not racing. So, but horse racing has a rich heritage here in Indiana, dating back to the mid 1800s. So some of the county fairs. And the biggest event was the Dan Patch event, which literally just Friday night. Yes. Which was seen on FS1, for example, to kind of give people a point of reference. And Griff and I were talking about this off the air earlier. Thoroughbred racing is attached to the Triple Crown, attached to the Derby, is kind of the more known. And again, that in this state is in Shelbyville, or again, go down to Ellis Park down in the Evansville area. This is thought to be one of the best standardbred racing states in the country, correct? So we have, we create breed development programs in the state. So incentive programs for to encourage people to breed horses in Indiana, because horse racing is good for Indiana. So our last economic study showed that horse racing is a $2 billion industry in Indiana. So as people are breeding horses here, they're buying green space. They're using veterinary services. They're buying trucks and trailers and hay, and they contribute to Indiana's economy. So actually, the Dan Patch Friday night was won by a offspring of our Indiana breed development program. So there was 3 Indiana horses in that race, and Sabonis was the horse that won it, and he's an Indiana sired and bred horse, meaning the mare was here, he was born here, he was raised here. So he's doing exactly what that program is meant to do. So when people come out to the state fair tonight, and obviously they've got literally a million things to do, racing starts here at 5. Yes. What exactly will they see starting at 5 o'clock if they venture to the grandstand? So there are 8 championship races. Okay. They're hosted about 15 minutes apart. So they will be able to, the grandstand is of course free. Yep. So they can come in and stop in for a little bit and watch a race. There's giveaways. The Indiana Standardbred Association will be giving away prizes, so they can put their name in a drawing for a prize. So they might walk out with a goodie bag or a gift card. I know they were giving gift cards earlier. And if you've never seen a horse race in person, here's your opportunity to come and watch it.
And again, absolutely free with your admission to the Indiana State Fair. Now, we had Tony on, and he referenced this multiple times as a family business.
Yes.
You are the ultimate example of that.
Yes.
Your dad trained a horse that was in action earlier today. Your dad is how old?
His birthday is today. He's 86 years old. So I grew up in this industry. My first job out of college was an intern with the Office of Commissioner of Agriculture, and they were implementing a drug testing program for the county fairs. So you kind of say drug testing for the fairs. These horses are held to a high standard. So much like Olympic athletes and professional athletes, they get tested. We want to make sure everything's done on a level playing field. So that's where I started, is going out and helping with the drug testing program for the county fair program, and then I just never left. So I moved from the Office of Commissioner of Agriculture over to the Racing Commission, and I have been there since 1999.
All right, so you get to go to various county fairs, or at least racetracks that are out county fairs, but this would be kind of the grandest stage of this circuit of them all. So when you were at the state fair and not working your job, what would you like to go check out here at the state fair?
Oh, I love the dairy bar.
Yeah,
so
good call.
I've already made a visit there. I haven't been to the pork tent yet. That's probably going to be my next stop.
Yep.
So I love the animals too, because I was a farm girl.
Yeah.
So I love to go see the animals. But there's lots of different activities to see.
Very cool. To find out more about the Indiana Standardbred Association, what's the best way to go about doing so?
They have a website. It's www.indianaharness.com.
Okay.
And if you're out there listening to this and saying, man, I can't make it to the state fair today, there's actually a link on the website. You can watch the races live at 5 o'clock.
Very cool.
So they stream them.
And again, they'll actually be back here at the State Fairgrounds on August the 25th. Other stops on the circuit for the rest of the year: Converse, Connorsville, Portland, Corden, my favorite, Kentland, and at Frankfort. So other stops along the way. Again, and those obviously aren't in county fairs, but using the facilities that are available at each of those county fairgrounds.
Yep, they are. They welcome horse racing, and they want to keep horse racing going, as long as we can. So we kind of extend this circuit, and these fairs are gracious enough to host horse racing because they know that it's impacting their local economy. So, and there's people raising and breeding racehorses in all 92 counties in the state of Indiana.
And I've already given Jessica the culinary advice that I could give about that trip to Corden coming up in the month of September. Pleasure to meet you, and thanks for having us out here today.
Thank you for having me on.
Again, Jessica Barnes with the Horse Race Commission, the Indiana Standardbred Association, kind enough to join us here at the State Fairgrounds. We'll have one more hour of show left to go. John is here at 3. Racing resumes at 5. But, of course, it's a state fair, and it's open, which means there's all kind of stuff going on as we speak. Back with more in a moment, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. This is normally where you hear Jake Query. You will again tomorrow. He has a one-day excursion to the south side of Chicago. He does an annual White Sox day game. Probably should check to see how the Pale Hose are doing today. I see if Colson Montgomery has homered for a 10th time in the course of his first month on the south side of Chicago. It is also a time of year where if you're flipping around ESPN, you'll see Little League Baseball or you will see Little League Softball. And again, a team from Indiana fared very well in that with Floyd's Knobs being second place in that. I was fortunate enough to do the American Legion World Series for 4 years. I didn't get an Indiana team in that event in my 4 years. It starts tomorrow down in Shelby, North Carolina, which is a real place. I know Kenny Powers is from there, but Shelby, North Carolina is an actual place. The team from Rockport, Indiana, is playing in that event, one of the 8 teams that take place tomorrow. Well, there was another Indiana youth team that fared exceedingly well in tournament play over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks, and that would be the senior boys team from the Indy RBI program. They won their regional. They went to the World Series, and they finished as the runners-up. A guy that serves as the baseball coach at Tech, runs many of the Indy RBI programs, and has been a friend of mine for many years, joins us now. His name is Bob Haney. Coach, how we doing today?
We're doing great, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and let's take this from a 30,000-foot view first. When somebody asks you what Indy RBI is, what do you tell them?
I tell them it's a program that introduces kids to the game. That's our main mission. We want kids to experience the game, baseball and softball, but that's our priority, is just to give the opportunities to the kids here in Indianapolis a chance to play the game.
How many different Little League sites or leagues does Indy RBI oversee at this point, Bob?
Right now we're operating out of 5 parks: Garfield Park, Rhodius Park, Forest Manor Park, Christian Park, and about 3 years ago we put all of our softball at Brookside Park.
Very cool. I know Forest Park kind of is the de facto headquarters, so to speak, but obviously you would like to grow the game as best you can and as best as you have the opportunity. And you work with youngsters, with the Little Leaguers. The kids that I'm referencing, the show they had in the RBI World Series, that is your oldest division. That are your high school kids. Tell me about where you kind of go about finding that talent and putting together that team every summer.
Well, that's been a journey. We've been going to the regionals for years. This is about my 15th year in the program. It's not been easy to do, but as our program has grown, more kids have been aware of what we're doing and the opportunities we have, and they have come to play in our summer program, and we pick a group of kids from our summer program, and that's who represents Indianapolis.
How many different high schools, Bob, do you have represented on that team?
I would say right now about 12 to 13. We got Whiteland, Park Tudor, Fishers, Silver Creek, Lawrence North, Lawrence Central, Columbus North, McCutcheon, Lafayette Jeff, Purdue Poly, and my school, Arsenal Tech.
That is a pretty wide swath of ground. So before you go play in a regional event or a World Series event, what sort of games, competition are you guys playing from the end of the high school season for most Memorial Day weekend until you get to those regional rounds in, say, the middle of July?
12 teams this past year in our summer program, and we just play against each other. About halfway through the season, we have a tryout. We pick our team. We have a few practices, a few scrimmage games, and that's about it. So we're kind of a little bit at a disadvantage, but it panned out this year, obviously.
I know that, and I'll get to kind of a bigger picture question, but I also know that maybe the most apples-to-apples comparison, or most like it, would be, and I cited the fact that I got to do the Legion World Series for 4 years, so I kind of know that. I know that it is more than baseball. It's baseball is the centerpiece, but it's life lessons, respect for country, et cetera. And I know in your program it's more than just baseball. So what else do you do for these young men and women, for your softball players too, that is more than just baseball or softball? What other sort of life skills, life lessons are you guys trying to teach here?
Well, the main thing we're trying to do is introduce them to the game, but we don't really worry about making Major League ball players. We worry about making Major League citizens. That's kind of our motto, and Major League Baseball's motto. And we really focus right there just to get involved enough to make a difference in these kids and these parents' lives.
All right, so regional round has been the usual stopping point. That was not the case this year. What got you guys over the hump, and who all were you competing with in the regional round?
In the regionals, we was competing with the Chicago White Sox, RBI, Chicago Cubs, RBI, the Milwaukee Brewers, the Minnesota Twins, and Gary, Indiana. That was our regional competition. The Chicago White Sox actually has won the World Series the last 3 years, and that's who we knocked off to be able to go to the World Series.
All right, so your World Series experience was in Florida, correct?
That's correct. Vero Beach, the old Dodger town, Jackie Rockins Training Complex.
Which is wonderful to hear. All right, what was the competition like at that level?
It's like running into 7 Chicago White Sox teams. You know, the Milwaukee Brewers team in the regionals, they were very impressive. So the Chicago Cubs. All the teams have really elevated the last 15 years that I've been involved. It's been pretty amazing to see the competition rise the way it has. These kids can really play some baseball.
I know, disappointed you didn't win it all, lost 5-4 in the championship game. What'd you tell the kids, though, after the run was over this weekend?
Well, we got some really good coaches, and they led us really well. Me and Mike, our director of operations, we kind of took a sidestep, but we were in their ear just to let them know how important they were to us, what they've accomplished, and how proud we are of them and how they represented Indianapolis in the state of Indiana. They did a great job.
Again, Bob Haney, baseball coach at Tech, Indy RBI program. Their senior boys finished as the national runners-up in a tournament down in Vero Beach, Florida, earlier this weekend. Joining us here, Greg Rakestraw in for Jay Query on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. While, again, your goal is to create Major League citizens, not Major League ball players, my guess would be if you were the national runners-up in your competition, you got some pretty good ball players. So I'm going to ask you, give me a couple of 3 guys I might be hearing about as a college baseball player or beyond from this current team.
Yeah, I'd really like to talk about them all, but the one thing that really sticks out to me was our outfield of Malik, Diego, and Mikey. The right fielder, center fielder, and left field is about the best high school group of outfielders I've ever seen assembled. They were just quick. They could hit. They could throw. Our center fielder had 4 putouts at the plate. Amazing catch. The catch in the World Series game by our right fielder, it was amazing. 2 outs. He don't catch that. He comes flying in. Complete dive forward. Comes up with it. Catches it. It was just pretty amazing.
Again, wonderful to hear. Hopefully, people are hearing this and thinking, all right, this sounds like a wonderful program, bringing more baseball to more places. And I know, having been on the board in previous years, the whole idea is to try to fill in the gaps. Maybe there aren't active little leagues these days, as many as there used to be. This is where Indy RBI gets in. This is the program Bob and I are talking about. It's kind of a program for an advanced age and a program down the road where these kids have had baseball in their lives for many years. If someone wants to bring Indy RBI to their area, or wants to be involved in terms of donating time or money or both, Bob, what's the best way to get involved?
I would say get a hold of our director of operations, our executive director, Mike Lennox. We also have a website. Just get us there. We'll go from there, and we'll get you involved and let you know a lot more about our program and what we're trying to achieve.
And I know the Indianapolis Indians have come on board in a much greater fashion as of late, correct?
Oh, man, I can't talk enough about that group. They have been excellent. They have guided us. They have helped us in a lot of areas to grow. And like I said, they don't like a lot of props. They like staying behind the scenes. But those folks down there at Victory Field are awesome.
All right, sounds good, my friend. I know that you're busy. I'll let you get back to it. Bob, I'm so happy for you, man. Congratulations on a wonderful run. I hope our paths cross again soon.
I appreciate it. I really do.
You got it. Bob Haney, again, he is the baseball coach at Tech High School. And again, his young men from the Indy RBI program did a wonderful job. And again, you heard him rattling off, the other teams they were competing with. Teams that were a part of major league organizations. And again, it just means you have major league funding behind you. There have been games. I know the Chicago games are often played at Curtis Granderson Field, which I work in college athletics, so I know where that is. That's UIC's baseball stadium in downtown Chicago that looks the Chicago skyline. I know they have played games. I want to say, kind of, if you're familiar with the north side of Cincinnati, like the Crosley replica on the north side around 275. I think they have played games at Great American Ballpark. Indy has been the largest chapter outside of a Major League Baseball market. And Mike Lennox, whom Bob referenced, has been a part of this really for 30 years at this point. The predecessor to it being Indy RBI was Play Ball Indiana. And then when the RBI program kind of got started, that was folded in. And again, the Indianapolis Indians have become a big part of this too. And obviously, Indianapolis, in terms of the Indians, they are minor league in name only in terms of the division they play in. They are running about as major league of a way as any minor league franchise is. So not surprisingly that the offshoot of this is something of a similar fashion. But like I said earlier, what I know I'm going to be filling in, the talk show brain never kind of turns off, even though I have not done a daily talk show now for 16 years. As soon as I know I'm all right, got a couple weeks notice I'm going to be doing this show, about 2 or 3 days out, all right, who do I want to have on as guests? What are the major topics that we're going to be talking about? In this case, all right, we're here on location. What guests are we working in, because of that? As you hear in the background, you hear the trucks moving around because they're moving some dirt around here at the State Fairgrounds, because right now the racing is actually down for a little bit. They'll be back up and running here at the State Fair at about 5 o'clock. But I'm like, you know what? I would love to give a little love to the Indy RBI kids for what they did, what they were able to accomplish, and it was great to kind of follow along with Bob's Facebook feed as to how things were going over the course of the last week. 317-239-1070, that is the telephone number. Again, you can tweet to me as well, at Greg Rakestraw, if you want to be a part of the program. We do have a guest coming up at 2:30. I have a couple of guests. They're going to be stopping by at some point in time during the 2 o'clock hour, and I can tell you, JMV is in the building. Well, I'm sure he ran into knowing half people that are in the fairgrounds. So he made an appearance at 2 o'clock, and he has ventured away, and hopefully he'll be back by 3 o'clock. Because I got kid pickup duty I got to get to as soon as the show is over with. We had not had anybody on today from a Colts conversation standpoint, because my thought would be is that I could hold up my end of the Colts conversation, and that would be sufficient. Some of the things we have talked about on that standpoint is this. Obviously, no practice yesterday. That was a complete day off. Today is a day of meetings, but not of open practice. There is one more open practice. That is tomorrow. That is the joint session against the Green Bay Packers. That is from 3 until 5 o'clock. That is your last chance to see the Colts at Grand Park. Training camp is officially closed to the public at that point in time. All operations after the game on Saturday move back to Colts headquarters at West 56th Street. Again, I don't think the quarterback battle is over with. My opinion, the job right now is Anthony Richardson's. I do think it is a legitimate competition. I do think that can change. I don't think that there will be a determination as to whom the starting quarterback will be until after we get through the Bengals game next Saturday. I don't know if we'll see Anthony and or Daniel Jones in that game next Saturday. Frankly, Shane Steichen has not revealed his plans yet. We know that Jones will get the start, but will play just a couple of series. We know that Richardson will play, in theory, a quarter and a half against the Packers. What will the Packers do? They typically have been a team that maybe hasn't played their starters as much, But they played Jordan Love, and Jordan hurt his non-throwing thumb. He is out for the remainder of the preseason. We will not see him on Saturday. We are scheduled to see the Colts ones for the first quarter. Now, do I think there's some exceptions to that? Yeah, I do. First of all, they're the guys that have been dinged up at practice and that we haven't seen. I was going to say in no particular order. In the order of me simply remembering who it is, Kenny Moore got hurt on Sunday. I doubt we see him. Alec Pierce got hurt on Sunday. I doubt we see him. We haven't seen Carlisle all camp. I doubt we see him. Khalil Herbert got hurt late in the game on Thursday. He has not practiced since that time. I doubt we see him. You'd say the same for DJ Montgomery. DJ Montgomery is going to make the practice squad at best, so maybe you kind of push him to the side. Have not seen Nick Cross, have not seen Kwity Paye in terms of active practice. So there are several guys that are starters that I don't think you are likely that you are going to see those players. There are some others that could be sad as well. Like, I'm not sure I need to see a lot of DeForest Buckner. I am not sure that I need to see a lot of Grover Stewart. I don't think I need to see a lot of Jonathan Taylor. To see certain guys to give Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones both reps with the ones would be nice. Maybe for that reason you see JT for a series. But frankly, he has been at practice every day. You will see him get reps in practice if you're out there against the Packers tomorrow. So there are certain guys that, again, I think have earned the veteran status. I'm not sure if we see him. Zaire Franklin's been back at practice, has been a full participant. I'm not sure. You know exactly what you have in Zaire. He's been the leading tackler in the National Football League each of the last 3 years. Maybe he might say, hey, give me a series just so I can kind of have the live fire element of it. There's not a lot you need to see from him. But in theory, you will see more of those guys, because really on Thursday in Baltimore, you saw Gonzalez, you saw Bordellini, you saw Warren, you briefly saw Kwity Paye. And again, the defensive end position is a little bit different. You know, you kind of see a pitching rotation of those guys. And the fact that JT Tuimoloau, by the way, I'm getting to the point where I can say that without looking at phonetically. How about that? Hey, good for me. The fact that he was playing deep into that game and that he was, to me, impressive in that game, honestly tells me a lot. Like, tells me that the Colts have built up some depth in terms of the pass rusher position. And like I said earlier, one thing that has been constant in terms of those practices out at Grand Park. I was not in Baltimore for the practice. I was there for the game. I flew in the next day. I got there literally like a week ago at this point. But by all accounts, Colts did well against the Ravens in the practice session when it was ones versus ones. We'll see if that repeats itself against the Packers tomorrow. But if the Colts can continue to get pressure in the backfield, that changes the scope of everything that they want to do defensively. And of all of the different aspects, elements of this team, coming out of camp, like I said, it's unique in the fact there is the one big, huge, obvious battle at the quarterback position. Other than that, like a lot of the other positional battles, are being dictated by injuries. You know, there's a battle at a linebacker spot because the guy that was kind of penciled in there in Carlisle has been hurt. There's a battle at a cornerback spot because the guy that you're going to give the job to, the third-round pick, tears his ACL last Tuesday, and Justin Wally, and he will not play a single down for you this season. Other than that, I got a pretty good handle on who the Colts starters will be. But if there is another overarching theme from watching practice on a day-by-day basis in Westfield, that theme would be as follows. Either the Colts offensive line has had some struggles, or the Colts defensive line maybe is better than we have seen. And again, I don't know if it's going to be one dominant player. You hope Laiatu Latu pops in year number 1 or year number 2, makes that first year to second year jump. You hope that JT Tuimoloau can have impact as a rookie. You hope that Samson Ebukam can bounce back to his form of 23, where he had one of the best years of his career. And then obviously we didn't see him in 24 because he got hurt like the second day of practice. You know, Kwity Paye is now up against it, being in year number 5 as a 2021, first-round pick. And I saw this earlier in camp too, and I'm curious to see if we see this on a semi-regular basis. They would have formations and rotations defensively where Neville Gallimore, who was a veteran, has played with the Cowboys and Rams, would play a defensive tackle spot, and DeForest Buckner would bounce outside. Again, you hope you get a flash or a pop from one or two of those guys, but I kind of getting the feeling from a defensive end standpoint, it is going to be in the aggregate for this team, and that's okay. I do think this team has depth in terms of pass rush. But knowing you have a coordinator in Lou Anarumo who is going to be far more aggressive than you saw from Gus Bradley, than you saw from Matt Eberflus, this will be a team that gets after it. And I think they've got the personnel to get after it as well. We're getting after it at the Indiana State Fairgrounds again. Racing activity is silent until 5 o'clock, but it's the State Fair. It's never that silent. And believe me, it's more than just the bulldozers that are apparently working on the parking area right in front of the track in front of us. So I know you're kind of hearing a little bit of beeping and banging, so to speak, while we're on the air. Hey, just a reminder that we are live at On Site today. We're at the State Fairgrounds, and after I am done, JMB will be here from 3 until 6. Another couple of guests lined up. We'll keep knocking them down when we come back on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Was he good?
My day at the Indiana State Fair is starting to wind down. JMV's day at the State Fair is just about to get started. He will be here beginning at 3 o'clock. He is in the building. He is signing autographs next to the dairy bar, I'm sure, as we speak. Now, the reason we are here, I mean, there's a million things going on at the State Fair. Like last year, I did a show here. I think I was filling in for John. I was over by the concert stage. Like Keanu Reeves was doing a sound check. People were going crazy. Today, the stars are the standard bred horses. There was racing going on earlier in the program. There is another session coming up at 5 o'clock. And again, these are what you call the trotters. These are the Indiana standard-bred horses. And we've talked to a couple of good people in terms of with the Indiana Standard-Bred Association. Now we're talking to somebody that is involved with training these horses and a big event coming up at the fairgrounds coming up this fall as well. That is Jamie McComber that joins us now. Hello, Jamie. How are you?
Hi. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Good. 35 horses in the McComber family stables at this point?
Yes.
All right. Tell me how you got in the business.
Oh, my parents were in the business. I swore I wasn't going to do it. I went to college. I got a degree. I went to the office for 6 years. And let me tell you, from being, quote, born in a barn to going to the office was quite a dramatic change for me. It took one phone call that said, Jamie, come train for me. Okay. Where do you want me? And I left the office and went to training horses.
What is it like training a standard-bred horse versus a thoroughbred horse?
Oh, there's so many differences. I've never trained a thoroughbred horse, but my mother has. So I do have a little bit of reference there. The thoroughbreds, the jockey sits on top of them, and they run. They are gallopers. So the standard-bred, you sit in a race bike behind them or a cart. Is what everybody calls it. You sit in that behind them, and our horses are gated. So you're going 30 plus miles an hour on a gate. Every horse trots. So we're going 30 miles an hour on a trot, and then the other gate is a pace. It's a lateral gate. The right side and the left side of the horse is going forward and backward at the same time. And so we're going, those are faster than trotters. So you go pretty fast with a pacer.
That's the thing that I noticed as I was walking in. And I've spent more time around thoroughbreds, but I've spent time around standardbreds as well. And literally one of the first races of the day was happening as I was walking to the grandstand. And as I'm walking to get to the grandstand, I notice, I'm like, man, that side car, obviously the truck that kind of is the starting gate and then kind of runs behind the horses as the race goes along, I guess moving at a pretty good clip. These horses are going at a pretty good speed here.
Yeah, so for the car, when the car leaves them, I'm going to guess the car's going 40 to 45 miles an hour to get out of their way.
Right.
So the horses are lined up behind it. The gate is opened up across the track, and that car's got to get out of the way. And the horse's max speed, not here at the fairgrounds typically, but, you know, when you're at a racetrack like Hoosier Park or whatnot, they're going 30 miles an hour plus. So like up to 32, 33 miles an hour.
One of the things that we have learned and talked about today when both Tony and Jessica were on with us earlier is the fact that this facility and other kind of county fairgrounds facilities, those are meant to be, you know, places where you can develop horses to get them to a Hoosier Park, to get them to other facilities across the country, to aspire to be at a place like the Hambletonian in New Jersey. And so how much running at Hoosier Park do you do? How much running do you do in county fairgrounds with the horses that you guys train?
Oh, good. So we don't race at county fairs. I learned really quick I'm not a county fair trainer. So they're smaller tracks. The racetrack at Hoosier Park is a 7/8 mile track. This is the only fair track in the state of Indiana that's a mile.
Yeah.
It was meant to be a racetrack, you know, to be a Hoosier Park or whatnot. So it's an advantage for these young horses to come here and race on this because you get to go a little bit faster. So all of the fair tracks in the state of Indiana are half-mile tracks. So the turns are tighter.
Sure.
You have to train your horse to do that. And I train at Hoosier Park. It's a 7/8 mile track. I can't train my horses to go 30 miles an hour around those tight turns.
So we have learned Jamie likes a big stage. That we have learned with the course of the conversation. Jamie McComber joining us here. Greg Rakestraw in for Jay Query. We're live at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. And again, Governor's Cup races resume at 5 o'clock today. And John will be here to tell you about it at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Part of having you on, so let's talk about a major event in your business. The horse sale that comes up this fall. Tell us about it.
Yes, so the horse sale is under new ownership this year, and we renamed the sale the Midwest Standardbred Horse Sale. And we named it the Midwest because we feel as an industry that the money's coming back to the Midwest. So the sale has always been focused on just horses bred in the state of Indiana. This year we opened it up. We allow any sired or bred horse into our horse sale, standardbred. And so we call it the Midwest Standardbred Horse Sale. We have and it's all yearlings for 2 days. It's all yearlings, so all babies that are bred within the state, within Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, New York, New Jersey. We have one Ontario bred coming from Canada. I think,
again, it's apples to oranges here, so to speak. But if you tell the average sports fan a horse sale, maybe they think of Keeneland down in Lexington from a thoroughbred standpoint. How is this event different than that one, other than the obvious type of horse?
Yeah, the obvious is there, but Keeneland is known to bring the prominent sired thoroughbreds.
Yep.
We are going to get there. That is our plan. We are going to have prominent sires. We have all the sires in Indiana, which we feel are prominent, we feel are great, but we need to introduce them to the rest of the world, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to bring buyers from everywhere, just like Keeneland does. And our goal is to make it an event like Keeneland. Let everybody know, hey, pretty soon this is going to be a 4-day event. And it's going to be a class act.
And that's going to be here, correct?
Yes.
And that is when?
October 16th, 17th, and 18th.
All right. Website and or phone number for more information on said event.
MidwestStandardbredHorseSale.com.
Very cool. All right. Couple quick things for you. What's the next event your horses will be running in?
We race at Hoosier Park. We have sire stakes action this weekend.
All right, so that's coming up. And finally, I know the thoroughbred trainers have to be up at like 3:30 or 4 a.m. every day. Does that work is that the way the standardbred operates as well?
Most of us,
okay.
Yes. I do like to get an early start. We like to beat the heat.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Sounds
work.
like soccer players, I know. Yeah, I get that completely. They got one of those. They're standing kind of right behind you.
I like it.
So in for most folks, it's 2:35. In your world, it's like 5:35 or 6:35.
Yeah,
you're on Icelandic time.
No, you get an afternoon nap. That's the key.
That's
you
the
get a
difference.
horseman's nap.
So you seem very perky for somebody that's usually having an afternoon nap right about now. Celsius energy is the reason behind that, huh?
Yeah.
Pleasure to meet you,
Thank
Jamie.
you very much. You too.
Thanks for joining us. Right,
Thank
Jamie
you.
McComber will be joining us here. I'll have you doff those headsets, and we'll bring on another guest. And Jamie will be back on with JMV, and I'm sure John will have a whole different slew of questions that will be coming up here in a matter of moments. But like I said, those were all the planned guests that were going to be joining us today. But this is significant because there's like a film crew that's following here. So as I was having a meeting with the Indy 11 earlier today, they said, hey, like the guys are going to the state fair today. Because we were talking about, from a video standpoint, using this on the Indy 11 broadcast on Saturday night. Because I will be calling the Indy 11 game from Indianapolis. Reese Charles Cook, backup goalkeeper for the Indy 11, will be playing in the game, or at least being on the sidelines from Northern Virginia. So through the magic of television, we'll merge those two coming up on Saturday night. How are you, my friend?
How are you, Greg? Good, sir.
Good to see you. Today was a day off from training for you guys, right?
Yeah, it was, and Ian dragged me out of my house. So
even on an off day?
Even on an off day, we have to work. So,
well, again, because you're so photogenic and so personal and social with folks, you were so good at going to a Buc-ee's and having Ian film it. We have now christened this as an entire series known as Reese Does America.
Yeah.
So today is Reese's day, as I'm speaking third person about you, at the Indiana State Fair.
Yeah.
So you just got here. What have you learned so far?
That Americans and food, very interesting.
So
very, very interesting.
Anybody from Great Britain, as you could probably tell where Reese is from, or Europe, will kind of look at us kind of sideways in terms of maybe food preparation and how our food is cooked. That gets turned up to like 37 once you get to a state fair where virtually everything and anything is deep fried.
Yeah.
So what have you had to eat here so far?
So I've only gone for two at the moment. I've had a corn dog because, I thought it was very American.
Right, and very Indy 11. There's a great history there.
Yeah, easily. I don't want to offend anyone, but it's easily one of the worst things I've ever tasted in my life. Easily. Like, honestly, horrendous.
This is the part where I tell Reese, the Brickyard Battalion, gives out awards at the end of the season, which are golden corn dogs. You don't have to eat them, just so you know.
Okay,
but that is a trophy.
Okay.
That was a Peter Wild original thing with the franchise honoring corn dogs. So the BYB may go to war with you on corn dogs.
Okay.
So that's
understandable, but
-1 for Reese.
Yeah.
All right, what's the other thing that you've tried so far?
2 things that I thought never go together. Okay. Honestly, after having it, for 2 minutes, I found that it shouldn't. But my first 3 bites was tremendous.
Okay.
I had well, you don't call it fries. I had fries.
Yeah, chips, right?
Yeah, chips.
What you would call chips?
Yeah. I had fries and chocolate.
Oh, that's you get that. You go to Wendy's for that. You just dip your fries in frosty fries. That's the way.
No.
That
should never.
Which is why
ever.
you're in shape and I'm not. That's a quick explanation.
I mean, it should never go together. I had white chocolate and normal chocolate, and I have to say, my first 3 bites was incredible.
Right.
By the time I walked from there to come and see you, I feel horrendous.
We just got to power through. You can't tap out like that. What else are you looking to check out while you're here today?
I've seen something called elephant ears, which
just deep fried dough.
Yeah. To be honest, the people around here are just, they're lovely. I'm not sure about some of the rides. I don't know if they've passed a supervision check. Obviously, I'm going to be involved Saturday.
Right.
So
all of these have passed some sort of legalese in terms of a waiver where you, in theory, should be safe.
Okay. Well, honestly, I'm not really a ride guy myself.
Fair enough.
But Ian's desperately trying to get me on.
All right. What's in England? Is there anything that resembles a state fair? Does this look completely foreign to you?
This is like I've left Earth and generally just landed somewhere else, and I generally can't believe some of the things I've seen so far.
Okay.
It's incredible.
Other than rides and fried stuff.
Yeah.
What about, have you checked that into the animals yet since you've been here?
No. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a huge animal guy, but I am going to go check them out. Do you want to give me an example what to expect? Or?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think of the best way. There's this wonderful building down to our left as you and I are sitting here, down kind of the main road here of the State Fairgrounds, and it's called the Swine Barn. That's typically where all the pigs would be. But there are show horses, there are show cows, there are sheep. The whole point of the Indiana State Fair is part of the agricultural aspect of the state of Indiana.
Yeah.
And so, over the years, it's kind of morphed into having a midway, having different things to eat, rides, exhibits, booths. The whole point of the state fair is that there are 92 county fairs, 92 counties in the state of Indiana. And if you were having like a show horse or a show animal, whatever the case may be, in theory, if you win your county fair, that kind of gives you the chance to come to Indianapolis and showcase your wares, and potentially you could sell off your prize pig to somebody or something along those lines.
Oh, okay.
I've really freeze-dried the explanation.
You've done really well there.
But
I generally thought it was just for the food.
Well, we've kind of marketed it that way.
Okay.
But there is kind of an agricultural tie-in. So we're sitting here at an empty racetrack, all right? And the lovely lady, Jamie, who is sitting next to you now, before you, she trains 35 horses for a living.
Oh, wow.
And so not like the thoroughbreds that you would see like in the Epsom Derby.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I didn't know you knew
I
that.
speak English and
Wow,
English.
yeah, wow. That's impressive.
See?
That's impressive.
This
Well
is
done.
what the play-by-play guy has to do.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that's not steeplechase racing.
Yeah.
This is the harness racing where, like, the driver literally sits in a cart and, like, the horse pulls them forward.
Wait, they still do this today?
They will do this. If you're going to be here at 5 o'clock, you will see a race on this track at 5 o'clock.
And they're in cars?
And they're in, like, little carts behind, like, pull-behind carts, yes. Absolutely.
That is incredible. I'm going to be here till 5.
Yeah. All right. So, Ian, you're stuck here till 5, just so you know.
That is unbelievable.
So, look for.
So, like Gladiator, they're in them like cart things, and
Yeah, except nobody's going to die at the end of it on purpose.
Okay.
Yes.
No
Nobody is looking at Joaquin Phoenix for thumbs up or thumbs down at the end of the race.
Okay, no worries.
It's not a horse stuff film. They're just racing to be competitive out here. All right. So. Okay, for those that don't know, because since Reese and I know each other, Reese is the backup goalkeeper for the Indy 11. Reese is playing in the States after playing in England for basically a better part of the last decade. This is his first chance, and again, he has Ian Gilmore, who's our wonderful director of video content for the team, is here filming all of this, and Reese is just kind of learning his way around. So what are some of the other highlights of living in the States for the last 6 months so far?
I'd definitely say the traveling and, the different cultures, and, you go to different states and there's different foods, and I didn't realize how big America was. Honestly,
it's a pretty big place.
It is ridiculous. Obviously, we went to Detroit, and I thought Detroit was down the road, and it was 4.5 hours. I was like, what is going on?
You're becoming one of us now, yeah.
Yeah. Because everyone's like, oh, the boys like, it's not that far a drive. And I was like, oh, okay, it must be like 2 hours. And it was 4 hours. Like, what's going on?
So if you watch any episode of Welcome to Wrexham, those people scream bloody murder if it's a 5-hour trip.
Yeah.
For us, like, that's nothing.
Yeah.
And in our league, that's just down the road to Detroit. And Reese is like all knackered about it because that's just kind of
some of the boys, they told me like the drives, obviously they're from different states, and they're like, yeah, I drove 12 hours straight.
Yeah.
To India, and I was like, what do you mean you drove 12 hours straight? Like, it's like, yeah, stop for gas, and that was about it.
That's what we do here. We got that much room here.
No, clearly, like, a majority of Americans are lunatics. Like, lovely people.
But just crazy.
You should not be on the road for 12 hours. I'm sorry.
We got enough land here. All right, So what does training look like for you tomorrow from a conditioning standpoint?
Training, it will be preparation for the game. You know, we've got a huge month coming up. We've got a game Saturday, and then we got the Jägermeister Cup on Wednesday.
Right.
And it's a big month for us. Obviously, we're pushing for playoffs, and we have great belief that we can win the Jägermeister Cup too and have a very good playoff run and even go the whole way. Things haven't gone exactly as planned, but as you see by performances, you know, results don't reflect on performances, and I think it's all coming together slowly, and I have 100% faith that it will change.
The reason I asked you that training question is I want to know exactly how much you can eat today before you would get just absolutely crushed tomorrow by Andy in training.
Oh, yeah, well, you know, I'm in a peak physical fitness, you know. I'm the
yes,
peak
you are.
years.
Yes.
Yeah. So this should all burn off by 6 o'clock, hopefully. So.
Done. All right.
Yeah.
More elephant ears for this guy. Reese Charles, good to see
Greg,
you, brother.
it's always a pleasure,
Enjoy
sir.
your first time at the fair.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, we'll come back and we'll wrap it all up next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. To say today's show has been eclectic would be an understatement. We talked to Jerry Palm, and again, you remember him from his work on CBS Sports for the last 15 or so years as their resident bracket guy. Jerry Palm Brackets is now where you can find his work, and he'll chronicle the entire football and college basketball season as well. We were joined by John Nolan, the radio voice of the Indiana Fever. Fever fall to the Dallas Wings last night, 81-80. Fever still above the playoff line. We were also joined by Bob Haney of Indy RBI. And we have been joined by three wonderful guests from the Indiana Standardbred Association and various ties to it. So thank you to Jamie McComber. Thank you to Tony Renz that joined us on the program. Also want to say a special thanks to Jessica Barnes on the show with us too. Now the other unplanned guest that we ended up having on the show today is he was planned as about 11 a.m. would be Reese Charles Cook, the very personable backup goalkeeper for the Indy 11, as we were explaining kind of the differences between living in the States, living in England. Is there anything like a state fair, county fair, there, and basically apparently it's a Renaissance fair, and that's like it. Nothing like the wonderful palace of all things deep fried that we enjoy, that, yes, very much has an agricultural background to it. Well, we have learned in passing that Reese actually was a guy that had a part in Ted Lasso. Now, this is where I chastise Reese Meehan, like, buddy, you kind of need to let us know these things so we can say these things on the broadcast and tweet them out on social media and expand the brand of the Indy 11. Don't just go, don't be so humble next time. Lead with, hey, I played for these teams as a pro. I've played my international football for Grenada, and I appeared in Ted Lasso. Say that off the top next time. And so literally the team videographer Ian Gilmore has been searching his Apple TV for the episodes where Reese is featured, where he goes, yeah, I was the starting goalkeeper for Manchester City in the FA Cup final against AFC Richmond, which is designed to be Crystal Palace more or less in the course of the show. So that is what the entirety of this break has been. I know I've got like 2 minutes left to go on the show. Eddie, anything I have missed for the good of the cause you'd like to bring up today?
I don't think so. You've done a terrific job of covering all your bases like usual.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Jake will be back tomorrow. Obviously, tomorrow will be a big day for the Indianapolis Colts because, again, the Colts have their last open practice, and it's their joint practice against the Packers. That is from 3 until 5. John will be following me both on these airwaves and in this very location. He is standing by, and he'll be here coming up in a matter of moments. And, again, the reason we have been at the State Fair today is because of the Governor's Cup races that are taking place. We had a morning session that finished at around 1 o'clock. The evening session starts at 5 o'clock. So John will have live racing during the 5 o'clock hour of the show. Tomorrow, like he did Monday, he will have live practice taking place in front of his broadcast location. So John is a talk show host. I am, frankly, a talk show host who really is more of a play-by-play guy. John has a week where he can work on his play-by-play skills. Monday, Colts practice. Today, horse racing. Tomorrow, Colts practice as well. John is up next. He will do a phenomenal job. I wish I had time to stop by the Dairy Bar for a key lime milkshake. Make sure when you come to the fair, you stop by and you get one for me. Thank you, John Griffin. Thank you to Eddie Garrison. Thanks to all of our wonderful guests that were part of the show today. Same station, same location, much better host. JMB next, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.